Hi, I'm Cathy Pickar. Welcome to Somerset Stories, where we're preserving digital windows into our community for both the current and future generations. Our guests today are returnees to the show. Barton Rubenstein, who is an internationally renowned sculptor, scientist, and environmental activist, and his son Ari, who is a rising sophomore at BCC High School and also an environmental activist. When they were here before, we were talking about their Mother Earth project, which is a global initiative in promoting sustainability through our little everyday acts. The sculpture, the Mother Earth sculpture, is down on the Georgetown waterfront, and those of you who are familiar with the waterfront have probably seen it. It's a beautiful stainless steel profile that overlooks the Potomac River as the river flows to the Chesapeake Bay and the sea beyond. But today we're here to talk about a new project under the umbrella of the Mother Earth Initiative, and it's called Parachutes for the Planet. So welcome, Barton. Welcome, Ari. Let's jump right in, so to speak, and tell me about, Barton, let's begin with you, Parachutes for the Planet.
Well, the Parachutes for the Planet is a project that started last year, and basically my son and I were going to different schools and meeting with different grades from high school to middle school and lower school, and we were talking about sustainability and the importance of living sustainably. And it was a great feeling what we were doing. And we brought our inflatable booth, which is this large inflatable that says, "How are you helping the environment?" And it all felt great, except every time you do something, you feel like, well, is that enough? We wanted to do something more. So actually, around that same time, Ari met a girl who came with a parachute to school. Why don't you tell a little bit about that parachute?
So she was a part of another project that were making parachutes for a climate march, a big climate march.
Okay.
And this girl, her name is Callan, she was bringing this one parachute around to different schools and having a bunch of kids from that school sign the parachute. So at that point, we were always reaching out to different people who were involved in the environment. So I was like, okay, let me reach out and talk to her. So I started talking, and she started emailing my dad about the parachute and just about what they're doing.
I saw us when I was speaking with you all before, and you spoke of Callan. Am I pronouncing her name correctly? And I love the picture of Callan sitting on her parachute, which is quite large. I mean, we'll get into the size of your project. It's quite large, right? How many feet? What? 24? That's what
24 feet.
And she's sitting in the middle of it, of the butterfly, as if she's the body of the butterfly. And it's just a beautiful photo.
Really cool.
And a lot of people have signed that parachute.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
I think there was about 1,600 people, and her parachute was actually encouraged to be created through the 350.org organization who was organizing the climate march. So there was a few other parachutes that size at the march.
And was this march on the mall?
It was in April last year, 2017. And at the same day, actually, we were doing the inaugural dedication of the sculpture. So we were not actually at the march because we were a different part of town in Georgetown. But what struck us about that parachute was that maybe we could, instead of going to schools one by one, we could encourage somehow schools and organizations around the world to want to make their own parachute.
Right.
So that was the beginning of the thought.
Yeah. What is the idea? Why a parachute? Why not, I think of going back, the famous AIDS quilt that was displayed on the mall. And so this vision is modeled somewhat after that, but why parachutes?
I think that parachutes has when you think of parachutes, you think of floating to earth in safety as opposed to falling to your death.
Correct. Right.
So we see it as a metaphor for bringing the planet back to a safe place.
Oh, nice.
It's also a very easy. It's also a very easy thing for people to get and paint on their own. We also accept for the project just bed quilts. I mean, not bed quilts, bed sheets. Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a circle, but it's like encouraged.
Well, I noticed on your website, your website is adorable. There's an adorable video about how to make one.
Oh, yeah, right.
Where
That
you
was by
have
Cathy.
the girl walking around in
Yes.
circles, and you give the dimensions of it.
Yeah.
And this has an international following, and we're going to get into that. I mean, you've had many parachutes sent in from countries all around the world.
Definitely.
But how do people, I could imagine that some people might want to make this parachute and maybe there's a financial constraint or whatever.
Yeah.
How are the parachutes, do you have a mechanism for funding them, giving them money to make the parachutes?
We do. So we have become a 501c3, a nonprofit, and we're accepting donations. And with a lot of those funds, we are funding communities. We call them parachute communities in different parts of the world. They are communities typically that have very limited resources. Right now, we've been focusing on a lot of the countries in Africa. And we basically send the money via Western Union. We can't send them checks or we can't send them wire transfers because many of these people don't even have bank accounts. But Western Union seems to be the currency of choice.
Oh, interesting.
So that's what we do, and we've been basically getting a lot of people excited around the world. It's been very, very exciting. In fact, 2 days ago, I was on a video conference with about 8 different countries planning new parachute communities for
Oh,
the
that's
future.
wonderful. That is wonderful. Well, I noticed also on the website, and I want to spend a lot of this show looking at pictures of the parachutes because they're just beautiful. But your family made a prototype of a parachute, right?
much.
And you have directions on ideally what to put on the parachute, like a colorful center, because 2 years from now, if you have 2,000 parachutes, for example, on the mall, and you were able to, display them on the mall, the
Yes.
National Mall, that would be quite a stunning visual,
Yeah.
as well as accounting for quite a bit of work in international communities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much the goal. Maybe even more than 2,000. Like, we're supposed to have a parachute display this fall. Hopefully, we'll be over 200 by then. But
And that will be on the mall as well?
The one in October will be in Georgetown, Waterfront Park.
Oh, okay.
Next to the sculpture.
And I think there is one coming up in July, correct? But
Yes.
that'll probably have already happened by the time people see this
That's
show.
correct.
But that will also be parachutes on a part of the mall, if I understand
Yes.
correctly?
We're planning the exact location, but it will be on the mall, either on the 12th Street crossover or maybe 6th Street.
And I assume the Park Service, you work all of this out with the Park Service
yeah.
fairly well in advance.
We do. Yes.
So I wish you luck with that, and I look forward to seeing it. But we're going to show your family's parachute.
Yeah.
And I particularly like around the edge, you did a close-up of what someone wrote on your parachute.
That's right.
And it was one of my favorite comments that was put on it. It said, you're encouraging everyone to commit to the acts that they do, that they can do daily
Yeah.
Yes.
to promote sustainability. And one of them said, I take short showers timed by 3 songs. And I got it right away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I loved that. So,
Yeah, that prototype was a prototype on many different levels. It was an opportunity for us as a family to figure out what it means to make a parachute and to give some guidelines to communities. We wanted to have some guidelines, and I think the main guidelines are we want people to write about their ideas about living sustainably, also to create a large image so that people can see the parachute from afar, and then also small artwork, you know, by coming close up to your parachute, you get to see all the details. So it's a little bit of different scales that we wanted to communicate to these communities, to understand what it is to exhibit a parachute.
Yes. Tell me a little bit more about the different organizations that you've worked with. I mean, both the overall Mother Earth Project is very tied into social media, right? And you depend a lot on social media for getting information out. But I assume there's some communities, or are there some communities that don't have access to the computers with whom you are still, that are through different organizations in the countries, or tell me a little bit about that.
I think one of the great partnerships that we're working with now is with the Citizens Climate Lobby, which is an organization that trains communities around the world to learn how to interact with government agencies in an efficient way and to talk about environmental issues in an effective way. It's very analytical, it's very structured, but what it isn't, it doesn't have an element of art. And because of it, it's slightly dry. That's a quote from them.
Yeah.
So I don't want. Yeah, that's an amazing organization. Well, they found us, and vice versa, and they love us, and we love them because they're the ones that have actually allowed us to spread internationally very quickly. And they've
interesting.
All the phone call I just mentioned to you before. That was via CCL, Citizens Climate Lobby, organized call. They're connecting us with all their communities, and people are really responding to our project and elevating what they're doing to another level, because what they're doing is taking their parachutes and having sister exhibitions around the world and taking them to their government officials to show them what their constituents are thinking in the form of art.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So where is the Citizens Climate Lobby? Where is it located? Where did it begin?
I believe it's based in Washington, D.C., like most headquarters.
Right. Yes.
And they had their 8th international conference just last month at the Omni Shurham Hotel.
Oh, really?
Which is interesting in a way that I didn't expect, because typically you think of a conference, people coming together, having meetings, and making stronger bonds, which they did do. But one thing that I didn't expect is they spent a whole day. They had pre-planned 500 meetings with government officials downtown. So everybody at the meeting had been assigned to a particular meeting.
Oh, really?
On Capitol Hill for a day, and that's where some of our parachutes accompanied them.
So this was primarily for the United States. You were meeting with United States government officials. So do they do this around the world?
I believe so, yes.
That's interesting.
I'm learning about the organization, too.
We're coming up on, I want you to hold some of these thoughts, but I just have to smile a little bit. When I spoke with you, I believe it was on July 2nd, you said you had about 70 parachutes that had just arrived at the post office.
Oh, yeah.
That you had to go pick up.
That was awesome.
And I loved there was one of your pictures was of the parachute all packaged up, and that had just arrived from India. So I want to show that, and also show that particular parachute. But let's hold that thought and get back to it.
Sure.
We're going to pause for a moment, and we'll return shortly with more information about parachutes for the planet.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today I'm just an aluminum can, but one day I could be a stadium.
Do your part. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank today.
This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Remember that to love America is to love all Americans, because love has no labels.
Welcome back to Somerset Stories. Our guests are Barton Rubenstein and his son Ari, and we're talking about parachutes for the planet. Right before the break, we were talking about you receiving so many of these parachutes in the mail, which are not small packages. And I wanted to, for the viewers, we're throwing up a picture of one of the packages, and it's from India. And I also want to show them the picture of the parachute that was in that package.
Yeah.
As an example of some of just the colors that are used are magnificent. And this one has, I believe it's a peacock.
Yeah.
And it says, nature is painting for us day after day. And I can just imagine seeing this from almost an aerial shot, which we'll probably not see when these are on the mall, unless you can hold a camera up over it. But I want the viewers to see just how beautiful this is and the striking colors. I know you have another event coming up in October. Can you tell me a little bit about this event?
Well, I'm happy that you brought up that Indian parachute. I think first, before telling you about the event, what really touched us was that this was done by a community with a lot of care. The packaging around the parachute had special handmade rope, and it was wax sealed. So I don't know, something about that was very powerful, because you got a sense of the hands that were on the parachute. And it made you realize that the artwork was not just about the artwork, but there was a community involved in it. So I just wanted to say that, because I think the Indian parachute was particularly powerful for those reasons. As far as the event coming up, we're still planning it, but basically we have plans to place the parachutes along the walkways of the Georgetown Waterfront Park. So they won't be on the hardscape, but they'll be on the grass next to it. So we're going to encourage people to walk on the hardscape, on the sidewalks, and not on the grass, because we want to preserve the grass. The National Park Service is concerned that all the foot traffic will damage the grass. Mm-hmm. So that was our compromise with the Park Service, that we'd put them right next to the sidewalk so people could walk on it and still see left and right the parachutes.
And what is the event? Who is sponsoring the event in October?
Well, right now it's a Mother Earth Project event.
It is?
Yes. So there's no, like the one that we're going to do next week is going to be with 0 Hour Youth Climate March.
So what is 0 Hour Youth Climate March? Is that an organization, or?
It is. This is a group of students who were a part of the sad shooting down in Florida at the school.
Oh, yes.
One of those students has started this movement. So it's a youth organized event, and basically it's about the environment, as you know, and they are very busy as we speak planning it, but that's going to be on the mall, and there's a lot of events around that. I
know, to give our viewers an idea of the size of the parachutes, we have an image of you that I love. I think, Barton, it's of you standing next to one of the parachutes on a gravel portion of the National Mall. We get a sense they're impressive sizes, and I love the art combined with this movement. I mean, the visual aesthetic of it is quite impressive as well. And I love that art is the vehicle where you navigate through the Mother Earth Project. Yeah. And of course, you're a professional artist and sculptor yourself, but that isn't required of the people making these parachutes. And in the end, it isn't necessarily the art that's on the parachute that is the critical component. It's about creating community, correct?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. We didn't want to make this like just an art exhibition, and we're very careful not to message our project as just sort of about art, and only about art. I remember we were over at Somerset Elementary School with teacher Lynn Lewis, who's been on a show previously with us.
Correct, yes, that was in our last show. That was wonderful, yes.
And at the end of one of our conversations, because she's been our pilot program, starting all our ideas and sharing our ideas and bouncing ideas off together. And I said at the end of one of these meetings together, the three of us, I said, you know, we should do something like the AIDS quilts type of exhibitions of all these artworks that they're doing at Somerset.
Right.
This is before the parachute idea came.
Oh, interesting.
So
that was a little kernel.
It was a kernel, and it was just like a complete throw out on the table and just like forget about it. But it just started to grow on us because the AIDS quilts in the 1990s were a tipping point for the world for their focus on trying to understand and solve the problems of this disease. And it is our inspiration, this event that happened in the 1990s. And it happened, and it was successful, so we feel like we can be successful doing that. And that's why we're using the parachute as, in lieu of the quilt, as our message.
I love the community aspect of, and I want to show our viewers some of, to get a sense of community. We have a picture of the parachute this is a community in Nigeria.
Yes.
And it says on it, the Government Science and Technical College. And you get a feel for the number of people just holding this parachute. What a community is created simply from making it. We have another one here that I love. I think this one is from Tanzania. And it's a group of women holding the parachute. And in one corner it says, empower women, empower world.
Yeah.
And I love that. So a lot of this is also about empowerment
Yeah.
of communities, correct?
You did. Go ahead.
I mean, saving the environment empowers many people, and anyone can get involved. It's not one type of person or anything, so it's very inclusive. And solving the environment will also solve a lot of other problems also.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Getting back to some of these pictures and community, it represents different ages, and I love this one. Is from a mother's group in Richmond, Virginia, and it looks like it's 3- and 4-year-olds working on the parachute. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, when my girls were that age many years ago, how exciting that would have been as a project to do for children. So I immediately called some of my friends last night who have grandchildren and said, you've got to do this with your grandchildren.
Great.
And we have another one here from Mountainside Montessori School. And again, we get a sense of the proportions because you see what looks like teenagers as they are around the circle of their parachute.
Yeah.
And then another one here is from, I think it was a Boys and Girls Club, I believe.
Yes.
And again, different ages. Working on, I love the butterfly in the middle of this one as well. And then finally we have, it's a Chesapeake community. I don't know particularly where it is, but I love, again, you just see the community working on this parachute, and it is quite special.
Yeah, so if I could just jump in, I think that what you're speaking to is exactly what happens is with this project is we discover things about ourselves going along, and what we didn't realize is that we are creating what we call parachute communities now. People who are jazzed up about doing this project, and it's not just about making a parachute, but we're galvanizing a community to become collective environmentalists, and we're actually asking them to commit to sustainable actions for the future. So we're activating communities too. We're creating them and we're activating them, and that's really powerful because therefore it's a dynamic process that we've created.
I love the dynamic process of it, and also you're reaching there's such diverse communities.
Oh, yeah.
We have different religious organizations. I think we have one from a church here close by in Severna Park, Maryland, from the Woods Church, and all hands on deck to save the earth. And in the center of theirs is the boat with hands on it. And then we have another one from a college. I love this. It's from NC State, the Hillel at NC State.
Yeah.
How did these people learn about you? Is it through the social media, do you think? Or do you even know?
Yeah, I know and I don't know.
Yes, right.
Is the answer.
I mean, it could be through organizations that we partnership with, them reaching out.
Yes.
Or sometimes people just stumble upon our website,
Isn't that
and email us
Yes.
we want to make a parachute, you know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's can range from
I want to
so
make
many
a parachute.
things.
Can I tell you? I want to make. So I
Sure.
have to find some community that's around me to make a
exactly.
parachute.
We have individuals making them too on
Do
their
you
own.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you really? I love this one that I thought was particularly powerful,
Yes.
and it's from the Marshall Islands.
Yeah.
And the message on it says, "Don't let our islands disappear." And if you
Yes.
look, one of the children, I imagine this is from a school, and it looks like the teachers asked them to write, "What do you see the Marshall Islands like 20 years from now?"
Yeah.
So they're having to think about the environment. And I noticed that on one of them, the child wrote, well, the Marshall Islands, I'm paraphrasing this, and it was also in a little bit halting English, which I imagine that the primary language is Marshallese or Ibon. But the Marshall Islands is a small island on a world map. We are poor. We have brown skin. And another one says, in 20 years, people on our island will be dying because we won't have food because of the drought. Or they talk about the rising level and a tsunami would sink them and they wouldn't come back up, is what he said. And it was
Yeah.
quite powerful. The
Yes, it's very true. Now that story, the Marshall Islands, is the part of this story that's sad, that this is not just an exciting project.
Right.
We're actually receiving voices, small voices from around the world, and a lot of them are actually asking for help and speaking about dire circumstances.
And he did. This person
Yeah.
at the end said, please help us. And if you look at the Marshall Islands, just on the global map,
Yeah.
they're so tiny
Yeah, they're
specks
really
in the ocean, and it's very frightening. And I
Yeah.
can imagine it's very frightening for
Yeah.
for these people. Another one from the Marshall Islands, which got me, many of us know, or from my generation, know of the Marshall Islands because in 1952, that's on one of the little islands, that's where the United States tested the hydrogen bomb. And on one of the parachutes in the center, it looks like what is an explosion
Yes.
of the hydrogen bomb.
Yeah.
And if this were made by a child, you can just imagine what the legend is or the lore on
Yeah.
that community.
Must not be good.
And if I can just add one other thing, just to give you the power of the parachutes, is we had all these parachutes down at the CCL, the Citizens Climate Lobby International Conference, and as it turned out, important people show up, and there was a United Nations official there, and she saw the Marshall Islands, and it turns out she does work with the president of the Marshall Islands.
Oh, interesting.
So she took photographs of it and tweeted them to the president, who then retweeted it.
Oh, wonderful.
That's
So-
awesome.
So there you go. Your social media is quite the impact.
Yes, that's what we want. We want these parachutes to speak volumes on their own.
And they are.
Yeah.
You're being successful. We're running out of time, but I want to show the viewers also one last parachute of many. And I encourage all of our viewers, please go to the website and look at hundreds of these parachutes. They're quite moving. But this one is from Rapid City High School in Rapid City, South Dakota. And on it, it has a reference to a Lakota poem, which is Matakuye Oyasin, which speaks to the interconnectedness of everything, of all of humans and nature.
Yeah.
And that is a good thought to leave us on. And I want to thank you, Barton and Ari, for being so generous with your time and coming back to speak with us on Somerset Stories. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. And I hope that our viewers will go to their website, which is motherearthproject.org. Thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us at Somerset Stories.